Lacrosse community. My name is Ryan Burns. I'm the founder of the Lacrosse Leadership Institute. It's our mission to empower all those that love lacrosse, to recognize the skills you gain from the sport, to ultimately live your best life possible. Today, we're so fortunate to be joined by Coach Brandon Davis. Brandon's a goalie savant. He's been coaching lacrosse and been a part of the game for a really long time. And we're so grateful, Brandon, for you to be a part of our community and conversation today. Before I give away too much of your bio, which includes things like being at LaxCon and being a presenter and putting on some of the most highly anticipated goalie camps on the West Coast. But Brandon, can you share with our community, how'd you get into lacrosse in the first place?
I was really, really bad at baseball. I was lucky enough. I grew up in New England, where lacrosse is a pretty prominent sport. And although it was a joke, it was true. I was not good at baseball. I could throw really well, but just batting was not my thing. My dad's nickname for me was the statue, because I just stood there and hoped to get walked. And then it turned into, a buddy of mine played and we threw around, and then some guys that worked at a place that my mom managed, hey, let's throw around. Okay. And, they give the typical line you do to a 10-year-old that, hey, you're really good. So of course I ran with it and started playing lacrosse when I guess I was younger than that, because I started in 4th grade. So whatever that makes you, 8, 9, somewhere around there. And never looked back. So here I am now.
Oh my gosh. Well, we love to get the 8 and 9-year-olds in, especially here in Arizona. We try to get everyone at a young age, but it seems like you caught the bug. Can you take us through your journey a little bit, including you're not necessarily orthodox college recruiting experience and how you ultimately played in college?
Unique would be a great way to put it. So my town itself, a little Tolland, Connecticut, in the northeast corner, didn't have lacrosse, so I had to play for the next town over. So I played with them until the end of 8th grade. Got to high school, there was no high school team, so it took me 2 years, but we got it going. And so then I was getting recruited by a couple schools. I give all the credit to my high school coach. He just looks at me halfway through my junior year and he's like, "Do you want to play in college?" I was like, "Yeah." I didn't know that was like an option. I'm used to watching maybe a college game or two on ESPN on Memorial Day weekend, but I didn't really think college lacrosse was in the cards. So he got me eligible for some all-star games, because that was kind of before club ball was really a big thing, unless you played at, a charter school or something like that. So I played in the Super Juniors and Super Seniors game, which is kind of like an all-star game for the state of Connecticut. And then I played in the Nutmeg games, which on the East Coast, that's kind of a big thing for a lot of states. There's like Nutmeg is in Connecticut, the Empire State Games is in New York. And they just kind of split the state into regions. Each region gets a team, and it's a whole bunch of sports. Connecticut did like 20-something sports, everything from football, basketball, lacrosse, soccer, baseball, you name it. And that's how I got on people's radar. Long story short, I ended up I committed to the University of Hartford. And then 2 weeks after I committed, that was the end of my summer before my senior year of high school. The coach left and went to another school, wanted me to go there. That school was a really good academic school, and I was not a great student. So they were just like, go to, any school you want, go there for a semester, get good grades, and you can transfer in. So I had family in the area, so I went to Louisville, and they had announced they were starting a women's Division I team right as I got there. So they helped us out with a lot of funding. And even though it was club, we weren't your typical club. We had good practice facilities and coaches and all those different kinds of things. So in that semester there, I found out what kind of the coach that I wanted to play for really was. And I didn't want to play for that. He played a lot of favorites, and I didn't feel it was a good environment for me. So I just decided to stay at Louisville and play there. And I got to play 5 years because I had an injury. And then that was it. So that took me through the spring of 2009. I'm getting old.
But that shows you just how dynamic lacrosse can be. We can go from a place where you don't even have a high school team or a town team, and there's a love for the sport that allows you to keep fighting and hunting and pushing forward. And I think a lot of the youth watching can relate to that, ultimately knowing and finding that there are spots on rosters all across the country for players to ultimately go and play. And then beyond that, it sounds like you still have a love with all your coaching experience. Do you have a pinnacle lacrosse moment, or are there a couple moments that stick out to you?
I would say I probably have two, one coaching, one playing. Playing one was, so kind of to give a little backstory to this, I was a long stick midfielder, and I get to college, and when I was at my high school team, I was the backup goalie. If goalie gets a penalty, whatever, literally I would take my helmet off, throw his on, throw his chest pad over mine, or over my shoulder pads and jersey, grab his stick and play for the minute that Harry was in the penalty box. And then I'd run back off, switch back again, and there we went. So my sophomore year of college, we had 3 goalies, 1 quit, 1 graduated, and 1 couldn't pass the fitness test. And so the coach was just like, hey, we need a goalie. Does anybody have a background in it? And I was like, well, I played a little bit of ice hockey goalie, and like I'm not unfamiliar with it. I'm not a goalie, but I'm not, unfamiliar with it. So I ended up getting put in the cage. So probably about 2/3 of the way through the year, I looked like somebody that was a midfielder that you put in the goal. And we were playing the University of Kentucky, our arch rival. We were playing at their place, and there was this freak snowstorm that comes through, and it was absolutely like blizzards, snowing sideways. So in the first and third quarter, I couldn't see anything because the snow was blowing right into my face. And I was not having a good game at all. And I kept making excuses. And at the end of the first half, at the end of halftime, we're walking back out, and I'm trying to talk to my defense like, hey guys, I can't see anything. You got to slide faster. Don't give up the middle. Like the side shots I can see, but I can't have anything coming down the middle. And one of our midfielders, Ryan Smith, pulls me aside, and I won't tell you what he said because it's definitely not for young ears. Lots of asterisks if it was in subtitles, I'll put it that way. And it pretty much was quit making excuses, make the saves. And since that moment, I can tell you, if you brought me to that field, I can tell you exactly where I was, who was where, what officials were standing where. I picturesque memory of that moment in my life. And that made me realize, especially in a position like being a goaltender, where you're the position. And I've always gravitated towards the positions. Like I wasn't a receiver in football. I was the quarterback, right? When I did play baseball, I didn't want to be an outfielder. I was the catcher. I always wanted to be the guy that people looked at. You're one everybody looks to. And I realized that if I'm going to continue to play the positions, you can't make excuses. When something goes wrong, your thumb comes in. When something goes right, the finger goes out. You take the blame, you give the credit. And that helped me significantly, and it flipped a switch as far as my goaltending career. But it gave me a much better mindset going into, you can't make excuses. You just have to do it. And if you continue to make excuses, those around you are going to have a really, really hard time trusting you. So that did a lot for me. It started with on the field, but it has trickled into all different aspects of my life. Just don't make excuses, get the job done. Doesn't matter what happens, what goes wrong. There's always somebody that's got it worse than you. Suck it up and deal with it. There is a way to solve the problem. Making excuses is not one of them. So, and then the second one is in my coaching career. I coached in college on the women's side for 10 years. And we had a young lady that transferred in after her program closed, or the program folded. She actually was inside our conference. So I was aware of the player. We had played against her. It's a good story, so I'll use her name. Her name was Shelby. And so Shelby contacted me about wanting to transfer in. Why? Shelby had a bit of a reputation. She was a bit of a hothead. The only game that we actually directly played against her, she was ejected from the game for swearing at an official. She got a penalty and was walking off the field. The official, she was literally walking off the field. The official made a comment, tell her to get going. And again, quite a few expletives. But she was like, I'll get there when I get there. She got the hook. So that was my kind of experience with Miss Shelby Campbell. So she wants to transfer in. Her best friend's already transferring into us. And I told her, like, listen, I don't deal with that. That will not happen here. You've already got your warning. This won't happen. You are going to go to class. You're not going to backtalk. You're going to give me whatever you have. I'm one of those coaches that, I don't ask for 100% every day because it's physically impossible. I want whatever you have in the tank. If your tank's only at 80% because you didn't sleep well last night, well, give me 80%. If you've only got 50 because you're not feeling good, you're nursing a bum ankle, you thought you're in a bad mood because you thought you just failed the test, and your significant other just sent you a really weird text message that's kind of freaking you out, you might only have 50%. Well, hey, give me that 50%. So I told her, I was like, that's how it's going to work. And the first semester she was there, we butted heads a lot. She was good. She didn't mouth off, but there were quite a few times where she would kind of roll her eyes, and I know she was keeping in the comments she really wanted to say. And we continued to work with her. And she was put in a tough spot because the team she transferred from, she scored like 60% of their goals and came into our team and didn't even start. She went from scoring like 94 goals as a sophomore to 5 as a junior. We had a potent offense, and she had to earn her time. And boiling it all back down, we saw once she realized how altering a couple things that she did would benefit her in the long run, not just lacrosse, but, hey, applying yourself in classes or taking care of your diet. When she got to my campus, all that girl drank was Mountain Dew. I mean, we'd be walking out from the locker room to a game and she'd have a 20-ounce Mountain Dew in her hand, just pounding it. So we worked with her with all those other things, and she started to, as she bought in little by little, she saw how it worked. And the pinnacle moment was about halfway through that year. We had really started to see her progress in practice. And we had an injury, and we put her into the game in a crunch situation, and she gets fouled. She gets a free position shot, makes a great move, scores. But she did, and I don't even remember what it was, but she did. I do remember what it was. She did something that she wasn't supposed to do, but it worked, which is always the coach's worst nightmare. We're all sitting there going, no. Yes. Okay. It worked. Cool. Great. And it was just like she went the wrong direction, used the wrong hand, took a bad shot, but it worked. So, the team gets together right after the goal and they talk about adjustments, whatever. And we normally give them about 15, 20 seconds. So after they do, they start walking back to the next draw. And I just kind of I walked down equal with her on the sideline. I was like, Shelby, come here. So she walks over and has her head down and just thinks there's a yelling coming at her. And she gets about 10 yards from it. I'm just like, you earned that one. And, I put my arms out like this, and she comes running up, and I give her a big hug, and she jumps up into my arms, and they actually got a phenomenal picture of it. Because I'm about 6'1", she's about 5'2", so a bit of a height discrepancy. But that moment, just watching her expression go from, oh no, I'm going to get yelled at, to, wow, this was worth it, in the blink of an eye. It's better than, I've coached in national championship games and Final Fours and all that. That moment is so much better, without a doubt.
Oh, I think it's so cool, Brandon, where we can look back at your life and you remember the one moment while you were playing that just everything switched, and it's affected you for the rest of your life. And then talking about this situation with Shelby, it's the little things that seem small to these collegiate athletes, but ultimately they're going to totally change the outlook. Like, she was going for one trajectory. Now, after your coaching, she's going on a probably much higher
Oh
trajectory.
yeah. This is a girl that came to us with a barely eligible, like a 2.1 GPA. She ended up graduating with honors. She's now a sheriff in South Florida. Just won, I think, in March or April. She won Police Officer of the Month for the entire county she works in, which I don't want to give too much information, but is a very large county in Florida. And she has aspirations, hopefully in the next 2 years, of entering the FBI Academy. So, yeah, that's her trajectory definitely changed in the only 18 months she was with us.
Oh, that's incredible. And I think that's one of the main reasons why I started this, to share stories just like this with you and Shelby of how lacrosse, which is something that we all love and we play because we have a passion for it, but how it ultimately affects your life for the positive and allows you to do what you ultimately want. How do you go about cultivating a team, or what does leadership mean to you, Brandon?
I would say leadership is doing what is right when you need to, even when it's the hard thing to do. I'm a big believer in leading from the front, not the back. There is nothing that I would ask anybody to do that I wouldn't do myself. I mean, I'm the guy that when we had to have indoor practices, I was there sweeping the floors before indoor practices so the girls didn't slip. I helped carry the equipment, and I strung the goals and all those different kinds of things. But the decisions that get made that can greatly affect your life, even if you don't realize the magnitude at the moment. If you see somebody around you continuing to make good decisions, that's going to bring you into that same mindset. I had a coach when I was younger that used to always say, and I've heard it in a bunch of other places now, but he's the first place I heard it, that said, you are the average of the 5 people you're around the most. And so it doesn't matter whether you're considering that a coach, a teammate, a parent, a sibling, whatever it is, you're the average of those 5 people. And so leadership isn't a coach. It's not the assistant coach. It's not just the captains. Everybody's a leader, because if the coach is giving a piece of information, whether it's a halftime speech or explaining a drill, and you're somebody in the back chirping off, saying who knows what, whether it's critiquing the coach or whoever's speaking, or just talking about, where you're going to go to dinner later that night, you might not be a leader, but you're, by definition, you don't have a C on your arm, but you're demonstrating negative leadership. So I think being a positive leader is just doing what's right when you need to, even when it's not the most fun or the popular decision, whatever it is. So I think too many people nowadays get caught up with wanting to do what is easy compared to what's right. Or even more so, people want to say what people want to hear, not what they want to hear, when they should be saying what they need to hear. So I think that's something that has become more and more rare. But when you see it, it's amazing and it stands out. And it is something that can greatly affect your life in a good way, just by taking the extra 2 seconds to think about, how is this going to affect the people around me? What's best for them? Not just necessarily what's best for me and my interests.
I think that's the biggest part of the whole thing, is the leader, he's thinking about others. He's trying to unlock the potential in others, or she. And ultimately that individual has to rise above, and they have to stick with their integrity, doing what's right better than what's possibly liked. Can you share an example of your coaching experience or a leading experience where you had to make one of those tough calls, or do something that maybe wasn't liked at the time, but you knew it was the right thing to do?
Yeah, I got, it's an oldie, but I got one. So before I was at my most recent coaching job, I coached at a high school in Louisville, Kentucky, and we were successful. There's a couple rings in the jewelry box from there, and I inherited a program that was kind of viewed, because lacrosse in Kentucky is not huge. It was kind of viewed as a club program-ish. It had 30-something girls in the program. I was the assistant coach for a year, and there was a young lady that was on varsity as a freshman. So the next year, the coach leaves. I was asked to take over, and I made it very clear from the first meeting in September of 2009. Like, this is not, like, we're going to do this the right way. And so we had tryouts, and we grew the program. And this young lady that was on varsity as a freshman, we put on JV because we thought, it's like, hey, you're really not going to play on varsity. We're going to put you on JV, get some time. That, and there's some attitude things that we think we need to deal with. There's a popular girl, but she was that girl standing in the back of the circle making comments when coach was trying to tell everybody what was going on. She wasn't happy. Everybody dealt with it. It happened. We got through that season. Next season comes around. We put her on JV again because she still is, there's some attitude issues. There's definitely some work ethic issues. The way we explained it to the program was, we are in our 5-year plan, we're moving from a bunch of friends that play lacrosse. We wanted to then transition into a bunch of lacrosse players. And we wanted to transition into a lacrosse team. And then the 5-year plan was, we wanted to evolve into a lacrosse program where there's expectations from the moment you put that uniform on. You represent because we grew the program to 120 players for a high school. It was huge. We were the first team to have freshman teams, which was really, really hard logistically to figure out who are we going to play. But anyway, so in our transition we were getting to the point where we were a lacrosse team. We had done well. We'd won the state championship the year before. We put this young lady on JV again, her junior year. She comes to me in the hotel on a team trip and says, I want to be moved to varsity. So I'm sitting there with 2 parents, my coaching staff. Okay, explain to me why you want to be moved to varsity. And her response is verbatim, well, all my friends are on varsity. I didn't tell this to her, but it's not the answer you should have gone with. If you would have said, I've been trying really hard, and I believe I can play at that level, and I've been really trying to work on my attitude, yeah, we'll take a look at it. But when your first response is all my friends are on varsity, that's not going to look good on you. So we had a couple conversations throughout the rest of the year. She comes back as a senior. School has a policy, no seniors on JV. And we cut her. And it got ugly, but including like the rest of my seniors that year. Hey, you got to, like, we've never cut a senior. You can't do that. Like, at this school, you don't cut seniors. But I knew that if we kept this young lady on the roster, that we were going to have issues. One of my coaching idols, the gentleman that I coached football for, and he was my boss for years. I considered the man my second father. He always explained to me what they call the 10-80-10 rule. And if you draw a line and you put every single player on that line somewhere, and on one side is the people that are going to go 100%, give you everything they have every day as a coach. You never have to worry about them. They're putting in the extra work. They're good people. They're positive, around teammates. And then on the other end are the people that are just there for the apparel or because their friends are there or whatever. You put everybody on that line somewhere. The top 10% of the kids you'll never have to worry about. They're going to have good attitudes. They're going to try. They're going to work hard. They're going to be a positive influence. Then there's the 10% on the bottom that are the opposite. Whichever 10% controls the 80 in the middle the most wins. If that 10% at the top can start pulling kids towards the top, and hey, maybe they're getting extra reps, maybe they're listening better when coach is talking, great. The culture is going to take off and it's going to soar. That's a place where people are going to want to be. And when you're happy there, you're going to work harder. When you work harder, you're more successful. When you're more successful, you're happier. And it's just a cycle and it keeps growing. if the bottom 10% has more hold and has more effect, then people don't want to come to practice. When you don't want to be there, you don't want to try hard. And it's a negative cycle. So we viewed by not allowing this young lady on the varsity team that we were getting rid of that bottom 10%. And I mean, there were all kinds of emails and phone calls and petitions, and there were a couple parents that called for me to get fired, but my athletic director had my back, and I give her a lot of credit for that. It went all the way up. This was a Catholic school. It went all the way up to the Archdiocese of Louisville. But I made a hard call. I took the blame for it. I didn't say any of my assistants told me to do it. Did I use their input? Absolutely. But I took the fall for it. There are people to this day, I can guarantee if I saw her mother on the street, she'd probably walk up and slap me. And it's been over 10 years. But it was better. And that year, I think we went from a good team to a great team that had some amazing chemistry. And we won another state championship, one that we should not have won. Talent-wise, we were not the best team. But we were the best group of people playing lacrosse in the state that year, even though there was more talent on other teams. So that's a long answer, but there's one.
Brandon, I'm so appreciative of that, though, because I've never heard of the 10-80-10 in terms of creating the culture. And that's something that's implementable by anyone. We can understand where sometimes you want to keep someone on your team because they just have so much talent, but they just have these nasty attitudes. They're not paying attention. They're chirping at the back of the line. They're distracting the other teammates. Ultimately, that hurts us. And to see how you ultimately face that and decide to put your foot down and say, hey, this isn't the type of program we're ultimately going to run. This doesn't create a conducive environment for success long-term, and sticking to your guns and then seeing success at the end is really an inspiration, I think, for all coaches who are going through that tough circumstance, because I'm sure it happens much more than we think. So thank you so much for sharing that. I know we're wrapping up on time a little bit right now. I'd love for you to share a little bit, though, about why you're such a goalie savant and all that you're doing on the goalie side of things.
Sure. That's how I actually got into coaching women's lacrosse. It was actually my other captain with me at Louisville. His girlfriend, now wife, was the coach at the school that I was just talking about. And she was like, I was coaching on the men's side. There was a coaching change. So I was stuck at the beginning of the year with no place to coach. And she was like, hey, well, I just need help with the goalies. Why don't you come out? You'll be like the varsity assistant, but you'll work with all the goalies. Okay, cool. Why not? And then she left at the end of the year and I became the head coach. And I was like, well, I guess I've got to learn women's lacrosse then. Okay. But it started with hyper focusing on the goalies there, because at the time I didn't know anything else about women's lacrosse. Like, they share a goal and that's it. So that was the only thing that I could really dive down into, because I didn't know how much I could talk about running an offense or running a defense. And, obviously, like, slide packages are different in women's lacrosse and men's lacrosse. I came from running, our base defense was a 3-3 zone in college. You can't do that in women's. So I just really, really dug in, and I did a lot of research. I talked to a lot of people because I wanted to be able to give those goalies the best experience they could. And I thought at the time there was going to be a bigger difference between men's lacrosse and women's lacrosse as far as the goaltender was concerned. And there is, don't get me wrong. There is a huge difference, but I thought it would be more. I thought it was going to be completely different positions. But really, it's the shots they face. Women's lacrosse, 80% of your shots come within 3 feet, where that's like maybe 10% of shots for men. So we don't have to worry about time and room shots and release angle and stuff like that is different coming out of the stick. And then women generally have to be a little bit more aggressive with their feet, because women are normally shorter than guys goalies. You have to step in order to take away angles. But I did a lot of research and I really dove into it. And then I got hooked up with a couple different companies that had me come in and work their camps as a goalie person. And it just took off from there. And here in the state of Kentucky, there's really only one other person that is a true goalie person. So I can't tell you how many kids I would have DM me on Instagram or they get a hold of my cell phone number or my email and, hey, looking for private lessons or this or that. And then I started working with US Lacrosse doing their coaches education clinics. And a couple people there saw that I was working well with goalies and I could take complex ideas and break them down to somebody that's never held a stick before. Or because I grew up playing a lot of sports, there's pretty much no normal sport I haven't played. I was able to take, oh, you're a basketball player. Okay, well, you know how to do this. Let me put it in basketball terms, and this is how we're going to do it. It's, oh, okay. Or especially around here, I could take a softball catcher and, show them, they already know the footwork, how to block the plate, when they've got one coming through the dirt, how to knock it down in front of them. Well, a 3-step footwork technique in goal, as far as lacrosse goalie, is the same as sliding to block the plate in a pitch or with a pitch, as far as mechanics and how you rotate your hips and all that kind of stuff. But the guys at US Lacrosse saw me do that. So they asked me, I think 5 years ago was the first time I did it. So I've now presented 4 times for them, twice out in Las Vegas at the Western Regional Conference. And the last 2 years I did it at LaxCon. Well, I guess this past year was at LaxCon. The year before was from my home, via Zoom at a LaxCon event. But yeah, so that's kind of where we are now. And then I've made a good enough name for myself that college programs, when they run like their summer camps and stuff like that, will have me come in directly work with their goalies. So like I got hooked up with the former U of L coaching staff. She would always have me come in. I'd work their camp, but all I would do was take like their goalie commits, and she'd be like, all right, go teach them how to be a college goalie. Like the rest, if they're not a recruit, they can go like get normal goalie training and stuff like that. But we want to see what they're going to do when they get here. So go throw them into the fire. So I've had a couple different D1 schools that have had me come in and do that. And it's a lot of fun. And I get to see a lot of really good goalies. So I really, really enjoy that. And now I get to watch a few of them on TV and whether they're still in college or pros and stuff like that. So yeah, that's what I've got. There's a few of them over there. Those are just the ones that I quote unquote use. There's a lot of sticks around. My wife actually made me clean my office out. That whole wall used to be, you couldn't see the wall because there were so many sticks. So she made me clean them out, and they're being sorted right now in our guest room. The count was 54.
Oh, whoa.
just in my office. Never mind. That doesn't count let's see, there's 6 more there. I got all my helmets sitting up over there. Got a little like table behind me with all my gloves on it. I've got a big display over here that one of my former players made me with all my college, it's like my college helmet and gloves and all that kind of stuff. So I'm a big equipment guy.
Oh, Brandon, we can tell how much you love lacrosse. You can take a passion and something you're good at, dive all the way in, and then ultimately make it easy for people to understand. And I think that's leadership as well. Thank you so much for taking the time. Do you have a last thought about lacrosse or leadership that you can share with our group today?
Always be true to yourself. Don't change for anybody. There's a saying that I use with my teams all the time, and it's kind of the point where it's like a joke now. But character is revealed with how you deal with adversity. And that is something that no one can ever take away from you. So even when it doesn't feel like it's the popular thing or it's hard, but it's right, you gotta do it. So they might not like you now, but they'll respect you later.
That's the biggest thing. We got to be able to look at ourselves in the mirrors. At the end of the day, be ourselves. Brandon, thanks so much for dropping so many just knowledge bombs on us today. It's truly incredible. Thank you for all that you do for lacrosse, and we're so excited to cheer you on moving forward.
Much appreciated.